Hello everyone, Mrhappy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mrhappy, aka Mrhappy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. So the only thing I want to talk about before we get into the Q&A real quick is the patron list. Now, before I actually thank our patrons for the week, I want to say we have a bunch of people who have pledged or changed pledges in the last week, but haven't contacted me with contact information regarding adding them to this. Not even contact information, just what name you want me to display on the weekly sponsor list. So if you're someone who's pledged, and I'm not going to call you out by your real names, if you're someone who's pledged in recent days and you qualify for any one of the tiers, be sure to let me know, because your name should be on this list. I know I have a couple of people who should be on the elite sponsor list this week, and I think one person who didn't give me a name who should be on the standard sponsor list. So make sure you guys are letting me know so I could properly thank you whenever we do these videos. But anyway, we've been doing a sponsor list for Mondays with Mrhappy, well, for the YouTube channel in general, ever since hashtag demonetized started. And you guys have been making things, making it so I never have to delay content. YouTube recommends now if something gets demonetized, oh, put it in unlisted and just wait for it to get monetized, and then you can post it. And I'm like, yeah, I'd rather not delay a video 24 to 48 hours just to do that. So you guys on Patreon have been making it so I never need to do that. So we have a long list of people. Hopefully I don't screw up any of the names this week. We've got That Lame Weeb, Ashen, Emiya of Cerberus, MrSynestrrr, Argoti, Fafarian, Rendil, Giraffeswillrule, Stevie-Rex, and Neon. Those are our standard sponsors. Our elite sponsors, we have Mentaru, Marsh Techie, Ellisan Le'ore, Sour Cream and Chives from Genova, Velestra of Famfrit, Kyoshi and the Reckless Tea Party on Cactar, Ignis Fairgun from the Diablo server, Goisha Valfer of Siren, Jean-Francois, The Macho Lewis, Hirschfirsch of Fairy, Phoenix Down Free Company on Goblin, Saren from Zodiark, and Rynoet Chikara. And then for our premium sponsors, we have Krovos Moonscar, Naku Niyame of Balmung, Iran the Avon Blanc Free Company on Zodiark, Janua Odin of Tonberry, Aqua's Sacrifice, Obaidel Shamsi, Spike, Nadia and Kurasame, Rudy Rudiger, Ten Colossus, Khuja Cross of the Genova server, Ahmed, Kurenai Oni, Abdullah, Killer Hackman, Raul Jr, Darklight 2013, Arthur Milgame, Bishop, and Kiltastic Jones. You guys are all awesome. Thank you. Thank you for supporting over on Patreon and making it so we never have to delay a video because of hashtag demonetized. Anyway, with that out of the way, I'm running a little late on the stream, so I'm just going to hop right into the questions. Thank you very much. All right, question number 1. Hey there, Mrhappy. Hope all is well. All's going well. Thank you. Thank you. Hope all is going well for you too. Hopefully you had a good Thanksgiving. My question is about enemy names. You know why Square Enix decided not to use the common names of a few iconic enemies? Most notably the Malboro and the Cactuar. Are they maybe saving these names for future versions of these enemies? Being a self-proclaimed veteran. So those aren't the only names for the Cactuar and the Malboro. The Morbol is the actual more common name when going through Malboros. A Malboro is a type of Morbol most of the time. Or they've done it both ways, if I'm not mistaken. They've done it where a Malboro is a member of the Morbol family. They've also just kind of accepted that naming some of them Morbol and people considering it as part of the Malboro family. I've seen it both ways depending on the game. Cactuars work the same way. Cactuars have like a different way of working depending on the game. Like, it's all down to the individual universes, but they've not just always been Cactuar, and Malboro. Sometimes they have had variances in the genus versus the species name altogether. I think one reason they may not just be directly only called Cactuars in 14 is that because they're cactuses, but they're not like the super traditional, like, you know, just like this and their arms just go like that. They're actual creatures. So I know I've seen the Cactuar name used, but it's not that they don't use them, it's that they're making sure that this world has its own reasons for why certain things are named certain ways. So all that information is probably in the lore book if I took a look, but I don't have it handy, so that'll be the end of my answer. Alright, off to a good start. Number 2, you're the talk of the town, Haps, thanks to those videos. I hate you, Viv. I hate you so much. Sorry, I had to. And also, hi. Hi to you too. Hi. About the comrades. Actually, since, you know... Oh, and about the story of 15. We got a few different questions to choose between here. About the comrades. The comrades. Are you Tama? I just finished playing. Yeah, there you go. Do the AI comrades level alongside you? So the AI comrades are always within a certain level of the host, or the lowest level person, actually, may be more accurate. Some of them have certain algorithms that make them maybe a few levels higher. And, like, for example, Kenny the Crow is usually like 10-ish levels higher than you and the rest of the AI, unless you're like above level 40. Whereas the other ones tend to hover around your level. Some of them hover a couple of levels below you, and some of them hover a couple levels above you. But yeah, as long as you're leveling up, then they tend to follow you along. So that way you're making sure you have a level relevant AI teammates. All right, number 3. Hey, Mr. Happy. I remember when Candy Crush first came out and it was making trillions of dollars every day off microtransactions. I stood up and boldly declared to everyone that this will be the downfall of the gaming industry. Watch how every other game dev sees dollar signs and start nickel and diming us. Now, years later, the premonition came true, and it's almost impossible to find a game without microtransactions. Question, do you think the game dev companies will ever go back to making quality, finished, pay-once games, or are microtransactions here to stay? So I have one very, very important question. Do you want the base... Would you be okay with the base price of games going up if it meant no microtransactions? Because the development process for games has gotten a bit more rigorous, at least in the form of AAA games. The expectation of, I guess, us, I'll say, as gamers, out of a AAA title is immensely higher than that of what we'd expect out of a game that may be complete, but isn't made by a AAA company. So what ends up happening mostly with the AAA companies is they're expected to have, you know, fully voice acted every NPC. You know how many people say, what? Not everything's voice acted, and they freak the fuck out? Yeah, there's example number 1. Graphics being hyper-realistic doesn't matter to everyone, but it sells really well, so it matters to the game companies. What ends up happening is the cost goes way up, but the prices of games haven't gone up, despite inflation and despite everything else. The prices of games have remained mostly static in terms of what you actually purchase out the box, which to me has been a surprise over the last 2 decades, at least in that time frame. So I guess the matter of the question is, would you be okay with getting no microtransactions, but the base price of the game goes up, or would you prefer that they tone down certain things that have kind of made the gaming industry more expensive, that require the companies to maybe hire more people or to spend more time doing a certain thing? It's why indie games have done so well, because they kind of just cut back on like the hyper realism, and they kind of go back to the way things were. Square Enix actually mastered this. The reason why Final Fantasy games use turn-based combat and the way that the art style was, it wasn't just because those consoles couldn't handle it or they couldn't handle above that. It's because it's way easier on development. It's way cheaper turn-based combat. It's a big thing regarding that in terms of assets that get a lot of mileage. So that's what indie game companies do now. They use assets and strategies that gain a lot of mileage and therefore are a lot cheaper. Would you be okay with a AAA company doing the same thing? If the answer to any of that pretty much is no, then no. I don't see a point where... So a game could be finished and solve microtransactions in a way, but I get what you're saying. But microtransactions, even in games that are what I would consider finished, or at least feel finished, are probably still very likely, unless we as people are willing to either accept practices that are cheaper and therefore may affect the quality based on modern standards, or be willing to pay more. All right, number 4. Hey, Happy. Been watching your videos since I first fell in love with Final Fantasy XIV early this year, but this is the first time I'm asking a question. You have 2, actually. Excellent. My first question is, what advice do you have for people looking to get into raiding but not the gameplay sense? I get this question a lot. I know it seems like probably not a great answer, but trying to hop right into a static group with no experience means you're pretty much only going to ever be able to join groups that have no experience. And that, depending on your personality type, that could be fine. For some people, they get really, really frustrated, even though they themselves may not have the experience to demand better performance out of the other people, if that makes sense. And especially, I don't want to be the person holding the party back, so it sounds like you take it a little bit more seriously. That could lead to some self-confidence issues that make finding a group even harder, because you're afraid to even try to join a group because of so-and-so. Honestly, as much as you may not want to hold people back, you may have to a little bit to learn to get your bearings, like even if it's just in the party finder or it's in the raid finder or something. You're probably going to have to start there, get your practice, make a name for yourself, and then look for a group once you have some experience under your belt. That's probably going to be your best bet. As much as you don't want to be holding people back, you have to at some point. You can't just hop right into, hey, I know exactly what I'm doing. You're gonna, until you reach that point where you know what you're doing, you're holding people back. And you know what? There are other people holding people back too. You're one of many, but you're not necessarily holding people back. That's just how you view at it. You're learning, and everyone has to learn at some point. And a lot of people don't accept that nowadays, and they expect everything to be done like that. No, you gotta learn. You're gonna hold people back, and you're gonna fuck up, and that's how it's gonna be. So you just gotta get over it and hop into that party finder and take care of the situation. As my chat just said, you gotta play the game to get good at the game. My second question is, Viera? Yay or nay? I'm indifferent. I think there's reasons why we may never see them as a race in terms of playable, but at the same time, give Final Fantasy fans enough fan service and you'll get them playing in droves. So I think at some point it's almost unavoidable, but only because, as difficult as it may be based on the way they kind of handle gear and clipping now, they may just have to put the time and effort into it to make it not a thing, because at one point they're going to be like, okay, next expansion's coming out. How do we get everyone playing again? Fiera. Beautiful. Do it. Don't even do anything else. It'll happen at some point. Alright, number 5. Sup, bruh? I already know where this is going. 2 quick questions. Do I want to read the first one? So when I get 2 questions from this person, the first one's a question, but it's not a question. Are you a haunted house? Because I might scream when I come inside you. So on to the actual question. People keep telling me to respect the content. What does that mean? I hear this meme was started by Xeno or something. I've heard respect the content prior to Xeno saying it. It's more of a thing in MMOs in general. It's definitely not exclusive to our community, but I'd say Xeno popularized it within our community. A lot of people in our community have never been exposed to lots of MMOs or MMO communities before, so I guess that's kind of rightful in that sense. As for what does it mean, there are ways that people play the game that may not necessarily be adequate to either A, their skill level, or B, what they're trying to accomplish. For example, you know, maybe somebody has no experience tanking without tank stance, decides to just do it because they see other people doing it, and they die. You know, they aren't able to hold aggro, they don't rotate their cooldowns properly, and they don't play it in such a way where it's possible. They're not respecting the content. The content is basically putting them in their place and saying, dude, you're not good enough to do this. Like, you gotta respect the content. And that can happen even with stuff, in the case of Ultimate, which is the most recent application of respect the content, that was just so brutally difficult from its design, from like all design aspects, that it made people respect it. There was nothing you could do to disrespect it. So, it's got a lot of multiple meanings, but most of the time you'll just kind of hear it used even when it's not in the proper context, as most memes are. Most memes are used incorrectly. And that'll probably be something you hear quite frequently. But that's what it means. It has a lot of applications, so expect to hear it a lot. Alright, number 6. Hey, Happy, how are you? I'm doing great. You doing okay? I'm doing okay. I hope you're doing okay. Just so you guys know, while I'm doing this recording, I got like, I don't know, it's like a little scratch in my throat. It just happened while I was in the middle of the last question. So, if you see me, like, doing like this, it's because I'm trying to, like, clear it up a little bit. I may even go grab water before the next question. Enjoying your Thursday stream? I don't know, because I'm answering this on Sunday. Did I enjoy my Thursday stream? Yeah, I streamed for 4 hours, then I went and did Thanksgiving with my girlfriend's family. We did hot pot. We did like an Asian Thanksgiving kind of thing. That's what my Twitter called it, at the very least, so that's what I'm going to call it. Last week, I asked 2 questions, and the answers led me to more questions. As most knowledge does, you're never done asking questions. Pick heads or tails. There's a brief review. And tails. There you go. I didn't actually flip a coin, I just picked one. Imagine that? That's all it is. I originally asked about the Forever Prisms being a thing. However, I didn't quite understand what I meant. Conversely, it's a way to basically keep the same glamour without having to redo it when upgrading. Oh. Conversely, was basically Stevie-Rex would should utilize transmogrification. I actually agree I see should use transmogrification, but I feel like it would take too long and they need a quick semi-fix. The thing is, that's not a quick semi-fix. I feel like Bishop said they do something in the glamour transfigure thing. There you go. So is that... Oh, okay. No. Honestly, what you're suggesting, the idea of withstanding a glamour upon effectively deleting one item and obtaining another, which is the process of upgrading gear in this game, is probably more work just to do that than it would be to actually incorporate an entirely new glamour system. The reason I say that is because when you delete an item, that's it. Like, you've removed the prism. Your prism is attached to the item. You don't just take your item and then it's, bam, better. The game is processing it as the removal of one item and the addition of another. That's why nothing stands. Not your materia, not your anything else. They would probably, knowing them at the very least, it would probably take them longer to do that than to instead just make it so that your appearance is your appearance and your gear is your gear. Which is kind of what the transmogrification system does. You select what gear will be your appearance, and then the gear that actually gives you stats is just something, entirely different on the side. So I think that it would be good because it would also mean you would get to keep materia. That would ultimately be the benefit for them working on what you're suggesting here is if they can do that, they can make it so you keep materia upon the upgrade as well, which is something I feel like people would want, and, you know, people would feasibly probably accept this as well. But the idea of the Forever Prism question I answered last week to me seemed like the more applicable use of a Forever Prism, so you don't have to keep buying them. I think it's better for them to work on the transmog. It would take a lot of effort for them to do what you're suggesting versus what they're already working on, and what's on its way in 4.2, or at least the start of the large-scale changes to the Glamour system are already coming in 4.2. Alright, number 7. Hey, Mr. Happy. How you doing? You doing alright? You doing alright? Finger guns. Hey. Hey. There you go. So the new PvP mode is hella fun. Like, I'm really enjoying it. More than Shatter. Anything's better than Shatter. And Feast. Yeah, I guess depending on your level of competitiveness. Yeah, that makes sense. So with that in mind, if the community really responds well to it, do you anticipate SE adding any new Machina like Alexander himself to the game? I don't see them ever adding a new mech to the mode we have now. If they were going to use mechs or add new ones, they would probably do it in a different game mode, because this isn't like as much as we compare it to MOBAs, this isn't like League of Legends where it's like, hey, here's the new mech this season for this mode. What does it do? Well, it does these things. They've kind of very clearly defined that they want each one of the three to be a strategic choice. That's very straightforward. One is good for both players and Machina. One's just good at killing players. One's just good at killing Machina and towers. And I'm sorry, one's just good at killing the towers. One's good at killing Machina and players, and the other one's good at pretty much everything, at least in some degree. I don't think it's like that where they just add more. But if they do want to add more, they could very well do so in other modes that aren't Rival Wing, or that aren't Astrologos, but are still within Rival Wings. The thing that differentiates Rival Wings and Frontlines is that Rival Wings is 2 teams, and that Frontlines is 3 teams. So anything that only has 2 teams is going to get thrown into Rival Wings from now on, like Astrologos. Whereas anything with 3 teams would still get thrown into Frontlines. Of course, then you have small-scale PvP, which is the Feast, but they've separated that entirely for its competitive nature. Maybe even a new style mode map. Yeah, I mean, we're going to get more maps and more modes and stuff like that at some point. I just want them to tone it back on this whole 24 people per team thing and do something that's smaller scale. Like 8v8 with the Feast, that mode is honestly not even that great because it's basically just a deathmatch with no real consequences and no real strategy either, because nobody talks to each other in Feast because you have to use pre-made things. But I want them to just dial it back, like something, maybe even just 12v12, 8v8, like capture the flag. Do something like do a classic. You still don't even have the classic PvP modes in your game. Give me a capture the flag that's like 12v12. That's all I'm saying. All right. All right, number 8. We're gonna leave that in. Hey, Mr. Happy, final sim here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, weekly Q&A show where we ask you questions, you answer them. 1, what's the best rotation for crafters? You are asking the wrong person. Go ask Ash that, because I don't even have crafters at 70, not a single one. 2, are gatherers easier and faster to level up than crafters? Well, there's less gatherers altogether, and they are pretty fast, but they're both really, really fast to level. I'd imagine crafters, if you're willing to like burn through leave quests, are probably faster, because you could... Yeah, as someone who hasn't leveled them, I can't really say, but my gatherers are super easy to level. I'd have to imagine crafters are faster than gatherers. There's just more of them. So, no, I'd say crafters. Crafters might be harder for some people to level, but faster, definitely, I think. Alright, number 9. But, hey, Mr. Happy, hope you had an awesome Thanksgiving. I did, and hopefully you had one as well. Well, you had a Thanksgiving, or a good one. You know, gotta start with having one, and then move up to having a good... Anyway, healers seem to be really strong in new PvP mode. That's because they are. I walked up to an Astrologian having, like, not really PvP'd much since 4.0, and I didn't go in prepared at all as my monk. I'm like, he's just a healer. That was a bad decision. Being tougher to take down the tanks, being able to hold their own against DPS jobs, do you think they need to be rebalanced for Astrologos? I mean, generally with the new PvP changes, unless you're going to gang up on them with a lot of people, then they're tough to kill anyway, which was kind of the point. You should need to make a you always needed to make a concentrated effort to kill a healer, but now it doesn't feel like insurmountable if you bring a few heads. It's just taking one on 1v1 gets a little bit tougher. And do they need to rebalance them? I've seen a lot of people start to do stuff like massing healers, because in a mech, it doesn't matter if you're a healer in Astrologos. And when it comes to the power generator, if you can just stand there with a couple of healers and make sure people never get the power generator, then yeah, you're strong. Do they need to be rebalanced just for Astrologos? That's a risky move. I don't think they've ever balanced abilities specific to a map before, as opposed to PvP versus PvE, which they've completely separated now. They might just be advantageous in that mode. That's a tough call for me to make. Do they need to? It might be, they might want to encourage the DPS to play DPS more than rebalance the healers. Like maybe make the buff that you get from soaring more beneficial for DPS than for healers, because it almost feels like a moot point when the healers are getting access to both the healing and the DPS, whereas the DPS are just getting the 20 DPS, and then the healer can honestly solo half the team. So that might be the better consideration, would be to make it so that you feel better playing a DPS when you do play a DPS, as opposed to rebalancing healers altogether. Number 10, hello Haps, got a question for you / need your opinion. So I've been in Static for 2 years, enjoy playing with them, but here lately we haven't... Okay, I get this question every time. Yeah, it's annoying me when I clear 04 Savage with Pugs, but I've never cleared with my Static, and yes, they all have cleared. You have a Static full of people who have all cleared 04 Savage, and you've cleared it with Pugs, but that specific group has never cleared it? What? 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 I mean, if you've beaten 04 Savage, I mean, you're assuming you're like not like a monk or like a melee DPS that, like, I guess other than a ninja, getting a melee DPS spot's kind of tough because everyone fucking plays melee DPS. There's so many of them on the market. If you're anything but that, I mean, you might just be able to go find another group, but if you're not, here's my answer to this. Regardless of your situation, if you're not having fun with the people you're playing with, that's on you to make the decision to change the environment you are in. This is true of most things in life. If you are not happy with the situation, you should be making active efforts to improve said situation. It's not always that simple, but if you at least think about improving the situation, it generally, you know, you're generally at least pushing your mentality in the right way. If you're not having fun with these people, you have two choices. Either do what you can to try and have fun with them, like look for ways to improve that situation, or get yourself out of this situation and put yourself in one where you are having fun. That's all that really matters in general. Alright, number 11. Hey guy, I main healers, but I've been working on my DPS rolls to finish up my quest to all 70. My question is DPS and AoEs. My method, as a black mage, is 4 or more. Fire 2, flare until... What? Okay, I'm going to move on to the questions because it's something I understand. However, playing Bard, I've been wondering if this is still the case. I would use Rain of Death and Quick Knock on... Oh, I see what you're saying. I use Rain of Death and Quick Knock on mob groups with Invigorate and Tactician to maintain MP, TP. I know I've been playing songs all the time with dots, but that understanding the void when killing mobs. Bonus question. I am confused. I know I should be playing songs all the time with dots, but is that understanding void when killing mobs? I'm so confused. So I think what you're trying to ask is when should I be doing single target, when should I be doing AoE? Because this is worded very, very odd. As Bard, what I usually did was I would straight shot dots on usually 2 targets, and then if it's a lot of mobs, most of the time Quick Knock, just make sure that every bloodletter that could be a Rain of Death is a Rain of Death. And that's the other thing, Ballad. If you have Ballad for AoEing, oh, it feels so good. So good. You want dots rolling, though, regardless of how many targets are. Usually on... If you have 3, most of the time I'll, like, do dots on 2, and then I'll just DPS 1. Whereas opposed to, with, like, 7 targets, I'll dot on 1 or 2, and then that's it. It's Quick Knock and Rain of Death for the rest of the rest of that pull. I guess that's what you're asking. I'm not 100% certain. You should be playing songs with dots. Yeah, you should always be playing songs. Void when killing... There shouldn't be a void when killing anything. The only thing you're going to feel void of is bloodletter procs when you don't have Ballad. But your songs are designed in such a way where you should always have songs. The only time you don't have songs is when you're not fighting something or when it runs out between fights. So I'm not sure I 100% understand what you're trying to ask, but hopefully I've answered my situation for what I would do in like a Bard AoE situation with straight shot into dots, into making sure you use Rain of Death, and then if there's a lot of mobs, you do Quick Knock. Hopefully that's clear, and then with Ballad, you get the Rain of Death resets, and then it's crazy insane. If not, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question in general. You can also, as my chat's saying, just wind bite multiple targets since it's going to be your strongest one anyway. As long as you've got, like, X amount of dots ticking, that's what matters. You just need dots ticking. And then it gives you your procs and your resets and all that stuff. Bonus question if you have time. For Monk, I usually perfect balance, Rockbreaker rotation out for packs of 4 or more. What's your mob method for rule for mob? Okay, so this actually clarifies the first question, which is That's what it was. If there's a shit ton of mobs, I'll use Armor of the Destroyer. If there's not, I won't. Otherwise, I don't even bother Perfect Balance Rockbreaker. I just use Perfect Balance on the boss, man. I don't think there's ever been a situation where I'm so desperate to, like, AoE down mobs that I have to Perfect Balance Rockbreaker. I can use it in 03 Savage for padding if we're not doing LB strats on the giant plus the ninjas. Usually a pretty good use of Perfect Balance Rockbreaker there. But if not, man, I'll just do the normal rotation, just replace every third GCD with a Rockbreaker, and then throw in Howling Fist and Elixir Field and that stuff. One thing that's really fun to do on AoE packs as a monk, if you have physical DPS in your group, or even just a tank that's not Dark Knight, because then the Dark Knight AoE doesn't trigger this. But if you actually have why is that? Brotherhood. If you actually have Brotherhood available to you in an AoE pull, then you can basically get off either free TP return at least once with Purification, or you can also throw in some additional Forbidden Chakras, because when an ally AoEs, if it's like a physical AoE and it hits 8 targets, that's 8 chances to proc Brotherhood based on crits. So that's pretty nice. I usually will start doing... I won't do Armor of the Destroyer until there's like so many mobs that I don't even know how many there are. Other than that, yeah, just Rockbreaker every third and you should be okay. Alright, number 12. Hey, Haps, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving as well. Unlike the last time where I just hoped that the guy had a Thanksgiving. And then I hoped it was good afterwards. Anyway, long-time viewer, first-time asker. My bonus for you is being able to decide for Square after the fact of Final Fantasy VII which next single-digit Final Fantasy game they will completely... Please. That's all that matters. This is it. This is all that matters. Nothing else matters. Nothing. Nothing. 6. Anyway, on to my question. So after 3 years of playing 14, I decided to try and transfer from controller to mouse and keyboard. I get this question a lot too. Juggling the past couple days. Basic things like using actions while moving are particularly difficult. That's why I got my SteelSeries Rival 500 mouse. An MMO mouse that ergonomically fits to my right hand. It's got buttons on the side and customizable DPI for all of my MMO gaming needs. Need to move and attack on the run? No problem. Buy one. You get 10% off by using my discount code. Hashtag sponsored. We are sponsored by SteelSeries. Anyway, I do highly recommend an MMO mouse. That does help a lot with players when they're first trying to learn movement. Learning how to use an MMO mouse, a little bit of a skill on its own, but once you've gotten used to that, that should very much effectively help you with mouse and keyboard, with moving and attacking at the same time. Don't get me wrong, you can get used to it with strafing, either by rebinding A and D to strafe or using Q and E to strafe, and then making sure that a lot of your keys are very close to your movement keys so that you can reach them without having to take your hand off the keyboard. But an MMO mouse definitely helps with the move and attack at the same time thing. And it's just, for a lot of MMOers, it's just become a staple. If you don't have an MMO mouse, sometimes it's just harder. You need to come up with a third-party solution. I had a friend who wouldn't use MMO mice. What he would do instead is he would use his regular mouse, but he would bind things to his numpad, and he would, with his thumb, reach over from the mouse and touch the things on the numpad for the buttons he wanted to press. He had huge hands, so it probably worked better for him. Like, we're talking about someone who's like 6'8" with like hands twice the size of mine. But for me, that shit doesn't work, so I need an MMO mouse, basically. That's one of my big things. Overall view for pros and cons, mouse, keyboard versus controller. Honestly, I don't even like getting into pros and cons, because I'm always whatever tool you're best with is the tool that you should be utilizing. It's nice to try and master another tool, so that way you have options. But I'm always of the opinion that if you're not forced to make that decision, then you shouldn't just make yourself make it unless you're intrigued on doing it in general, in which case it's practice makes perfect, you know? It's just like anything else you would do. So that's how I feel. I feel like if you were good with the controller, then you're fine. You know, if you're good with the mouse keyboard, that's fine. If we were playing an FPS game, probably be a different conversation, but for an MMO, where there's not like twitch reflexes for like button presses and stuff, everything's like pre-coordinated, then yeah, it should be whatever tool you're best with. I don't even think there are really pros and cons outside of some super generic stuff you can overcome just by being good. Alright, number 13. Yo, Mr. Happy, recent viewer and first-time askers have a bonus of successful ultimate run. Nobody wants my monk for ultimate. They're like, hey, Haps, you want to play a ninja? And I said, no. And they were like, that's bad. That's too bad. Alright, see ya. I just want to play my job. I conformed to people for fucking 4 years. Let me unconform. Get a different ninja. I'll be the other melee. I main Monk and I'm almost caught up to the recent content since I started the end of Heavensward. It was just a bit behind patches. I noticed that there are 2 sets of item level 340 gear. Augmented Genji. I'm not sure which one to go for. This is where you need to go and just hit up Google or Reddit and just Google search stat weights for insert job name, insert relevant patch number. And literally just go from there. You're going to find a bunch of recommendations for that one. And that's just what it's going to be. And also, I don't think you've said what job you are. Oh no, you do main Monk. So for Monk, so there's 2 ways you can go with Monk. I went one way where I just pile on crit and direct hit and it's fucking awesome. There's also the more tactical way of piling on some skill speed and getting to like 1093 skill speed, and that buys you enough to kind of make Demolish fit a little nicer into your rotation, which should be Demolish every 3rd GCD outside of Riddle of Fire, where it can change depending on uptime, which you should have 100% in that case. Otherwise you shouldn't be using it. But that's kind of the 2 sides you can take, is the pile on crit direct hit and kind of ignore skill speed, and then determination just kind of fits in wherever it does. Or you go where you focus on a lot of crit, but you make sure you build that minimum skill speed number and then get the crit and direct hit. I've seen people do both, and I've seen both yield near similar results. At that point, you're working on min-maxing, where the differences only really matter if you're at like the highest caliber of skill level. Other than that, offstats have they don't have little impact, but per point they don't have high impact. So when you're comparing the total number of stats, it matters more than the individual value of the stats, unless you're playing at the absolute highest peak of min-maxing. And if you're asking me this question, I don't know if you've reached that point and just never educated yourself on the numbers. I wouldn't immediately assume so. So that's unfortunately the best that I can take it with you. But you generally want a mix of the gear. You don't just want one set or the other. You want to be mixing and matching the gear to get the best stats possible. And for your materia side of the question, same deal that I just explained with crit, direct hit, and skill speed regarding the numbers you want to reach for those. Alright, and this is the last question on the forums. Happy howdy, Mr. Happy. Regarding Glamours, my prediction is that with the addition of Prisms to Grand Company, they are now considered cheap and easy. Gear drops not for equipping are sacrificed for Grand Company seals, are sacrificed for descent, they're sacrificed for materia conversion. It's following the theme would be a Glamour book that we sacrifice gear to pull the image from later and still apply the Glamour Prism apply for free. Sacrifice described gear to the book requires Prism most likely increase the number based on descent rating. The roulette of happiness? Let's find out. Retainers, shortness. Not a Lalafell question. Curious. I'm going to take retainers. With the addition of Grand Company squad dungeons, do you think retainers will see something akin to it in the future? Nah. If they were going to do it with our retainers, they would have thought of doing that first instead of giving us 8 new NPCs that we can mess around with. I think that forever retainers will be just send them on a mission, let them do whatever, and then with our squadrons you have the choice between sending them off on a mission or doing the mission with them, either to get, you know, glam for the dungeons and stuff, or like to run your lower level stuff through dungeons or whatever the plan actually is for those, who knows. But yeah, I don't think either our Chocobo or our retainers are going to ever see anything akin to the squadron system, which was developed from the ground up to function the way that it does now. But anyway, that's the last question on the forums, so let's grab a couple of questions from the chat. Hopefully they're good ones, and we can move on from there. Let's get started. Alright, so the first question I have from the Twitch chat that I'm going to take is one about, like, min-maxing in, like, tight-end raid situations. So, when you reach the point of progression rating where you're trying to adjust and you want to gain that, like, last 100 DPS to beat the fight, do you think people should stick to the recommended build or attempt to balance their builds to be more comfortable with the effects of the secondary stats? So, I feel like, fundamentally, if you are failing a job mechanic because of, or if you have to blame your offstats on failing a basis of your job mechanic, that's what costs you the most DPS, is failing the basis of your job mechanics. I feel like that's not something that fixing your offstats is going to do. What's eventually going to happen is if you're getting lost in your rotation, you're just going to get lost at different points of your rotation. Like if it's a matter of like, hey, maybe I need more skill speed to be more comfortable with my demolish timings, great. You get that skill speed, but if you couldn't handle it before, it being like the decision making of like, should I do it now? Should I not do it now before? You don't really remove that decision making, because a lot of the problems with that type of decision making comes with doing mechanics and timing stuff at the exact same time. Like that's like a monk who doesn't change form to get to a demolish right at the beginning. You know, sometimes I'm so focused on like, hey, people have screwed this mechanic up a million times, I'm watching them to see if they screw it up, so I know if I should be disappointed, and I just go, oh shit, well maybe I should have been change forming during that. Happens to me, it happens to other people. You know, everyone's had that moment where they go, oh shit, I forgot to do that. You know, and it's just a matter of how frequently you do that. I don't think changing around your skill speed to get more comfortable with your job is going to be any better than you just straight up playing your job more efficiently. If I thought it was going to be more of, I guess, a question where it was, should you be willing to make changes for your team? And that comes down to, that's a whole different conversation than what you just asked. I'd say, however, if you've been neglecting doing it because you don't want to, but the other build is better, then that's a different story. But you're actually not asking me that. You're asking me going from recommended to comfort. So that's, yeah, that's completely backwards from the way I answered that question 90% of the time. So it's pretty good. I just imagine that if you can't do it on the recommended, I don't know how much more it's going to change for you changing your secondary stats to get you into a comfort level. Because really the only thing that affects comfort is going to be crit and like skill speed. I'm sorry, not even crit and skill speed, just skill speed. Skill speed's all about comfort, and spell speed are all about comfort. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to change enough to warrant the difference. The next one I have is more beginner level. I finally got Stormblood 2 weeks ago from my free company, IRL Friends, for my birthday. Hey, happy birthday. I got most of my creation gear and I'm trying to make gil. For a non-crafter, what do you recommend I do? So even as someone who doesn't craft at all for me, I have turned to certain crafting alternatives. For example, I did a lot of gathering to make money back in Heavensward. I haven't done it so much here. I did make a couple of million off mining back in like 4.0 around launch, but I haven't really done it much since. But it is a viable option depending on your server. Another thing is desynthesis. Desynthesis is not traditional crafting. You don't actually have to level crafters other than reaching a certain minimum to unlock it. So that's a very good option. That's to me, that's free money. Like every time I go through a dungeon and I get gear, I desynth it if I have the desynthesis stuff leveled, and I get a clear demi materia, or I get material that sells on the auction house, or I get something that I can use. And when a new patch comes out and a new material is from desynthesis, bam, done. Money in the pocket. It's just something that's so easy to keep up with once you've already leveled it. And it's something that it's just money that falls into your lap over time, you know, as long as you're actively playing the game. There are other things. There are some enemies out in the world you can just straight up kill. I don't think they're popular anymore, but an example I used to have was the tiers that came from, I can't remember. It was in Heavensward. It was right in Korthus Western. Deep Eye tiers. That's what they were. If you can find items that sell for like 500-600 a pop, and there's enemies out in the world that you don't mind going and killing for a little bit to sell on the market board later. It's an alternative. It's not a great one, but it's something overall. There's also just participating in, you know, treasure maps, which, you know, can give you money, even if you don't bring one and you're just, like, along for the ride, or even if you do bring one and then make a group and all of you do it, and then maybe you get a rare loot, and there's a bunch of ways, but they will take some effort to get to the point where you're doing them, outside of the one where you just straight up kill enemies. All right, next question from the chat. We have a lot of great questions. I'm not going to be able to answer all these, but we do have a lot of great questions because I'm hungry and I'm like 20 minutes over my stream time. So, MrHappy, if Relic Armor is the same as old Relic weapons, for those who don't know, Relic Armor was an idea that has confirmed to be with Eureka on its launch. Assuming the wording or the translations didn't get screwed up, I literally linked it and it seems to solidify, confirm anything you want to say it's absolute. It said it will be shipping with Eureka on launch. The idea of basically relic weapon, but apply it to armor pieces where you customize the stats and whatnot. So, assuming that happens, and you have it, and it can affect the game outside of Eureka, do you believe this will invalidate any real form of content? Considering people would only be able to obtain best in slot gear from only one form of content rather than raids tomes. Now, there is something that should be taken with care here. Now, this is something that we've also talked about with the relic weapon over the years. You know, eventually, I'm always under the impression I play the content for the content. The gear just is my vessel to get through it in a lot of the time. After that, I do like the thrill of collecting best in slot, but I also know the way the relics tend to work. I tend to do my raids a lot throughout the even numbered patch because there are no other options and I'm trying to get the best possible gear. When an odd numbered patch rolls around and gives me the upgrades to a relic weapon, for example, and then that starts to match or exceed my raid gear, then I go, okay, I did that for one job, ultimately. I'll do that for one job, and I'll max it out, and that'll be my form of progression from the odd-numbered patch to the even-numbered patch to get ready for the next raid tier, where I'll then play the content for the content, and then it loops over and over and over again. If the armor that happens with, I know there are definitely people that I personally know that would be demotivated from doing raids because they think, well, why don't I just wait for the odd-numbered patch and grind that out? For that, I kind of have to question, like, do you value the content? And if you don't, then I guess the ultimate reason is why you're doing it in the first place. But that's just because that's the way I approach content in general, I don't look at it for the rewards. I look at it for the experience most of the time. So, would it? Some people, absolutely. But other people would at least see it as something to do in the odd-numbered patches. Because the people who generally accept that BIS comes from the raids, they want more raids. That's all they want. The people who get the raids, they get their BIS, but they like playing the game normally. They want stuff to do during the odd-numbered patch. They generally will say things like, LOL, rip content, just grind out for stuff. They'll say shit like that, but they'll also do the whole fucking thing and pay their sub the whole time. Which, if you're gonna bitch about one thing and then just do it anyway, it's like, alright, Square Enix is like, okay, thanks for the money, see ya, enjoy your grind. It's like, who cares at that point, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it'll invalidate it for some people, but for other people, it'll be something to do. And they won't feel bad about it, because it'll be like a meaningful thing. Alright, I think this might be the last question I take for the video, at least. Yeah. So, Mrhappy, this is just a gamer question. I know you've played Final Fantasy Tactics because it's Final Fantasy. So, just to be clear, since you're making that assumption, I have. I played the original PlayStation 1 Tactics. I will say I did not play it until 3 years ago. And then, I also didn't finish it because it felt dated. Like, you know, there's old school, and then there's dated and, like, archaic. And, there's one other word I'm looking for, the word I actually wanted the most. And I've been waiting for, like, War of the Lions on Steam or something like that. Because War of the Lions, from what I can see, outside of needing an audio patch, from what people tell me, looks like it ages way better. Just because it was made on a more modern... it was made more modern than the one on the PlayStation 1. It's made a lot more accessible, and the menus are faster, yada, yada, yada. So, that's my history with Final Fantasy Tactics. Not finished the original Tactics, just to be clear. As for the actual question, how do I feel about tactical RPG genre in general? Now, when we talk about tactical RPG, we are talking about things more along the lines of, I guess, like the Fire Emblem games, or at least certain Fire Emblem games. You know, things like Tactics, Banner Saga, which would be a good indie example. Antihero would be another good indie example. Things like that. You know, games that are played on a grid, in a sense. And motion and positioning is just as important as the turn-based aspects of it. How do I feel about that genre? That genre, I guess the tactical RPG genre is one that has a very dedicated fan base. The people who play them are always looking for the next, like, great tactical RPG. It's a very specific subset of people that are really, really into those games. That almost always means they don't sell like hotcakes. It's not true all the time, but it has a much more narrow appeal. I think they're great. I love seeing how creative people can get with anything that involves a tactical RPG. Some people, like, just blow my expectations out of the water. It's like when you don't understand how to play chess and you see people, like, predict moves, like, well in advance and play the game around those predicted moves. It blows my mind. I can play a tactical RPG, I can beat it, but the way people go through those games sometimes, it's like watching a speedrunner, but you're not even speedrunning. You're just really fucking good at tactics. And I love it. But as for look for and value in games like that, I guess that's what I would look for in value. Is there anything you're looking forward to? Man, this is the one thing I'm gonna say, and as I'm a backer of a tactical game that has been through a roller coaster of shit, and some of you may know it. Let me see. Let's see. I gotta get the actual name. There it is. Unsung Story. That game, I am an original backer of that game. It was supposed to be like the spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics. Even Yasumi Matsuno provided an overall, like, story and lore for them to follow going through it. And he recorded videos. I was like, oh my god, I gotta be a part of this. I backed it. And the company that was initially doing it, we don't know if they ever got any fucking work done. Like, they might as well just stolen the money and ran. And eventually, a new company called Little Orbit has taken over the development of Unsung Story and have been very vocal about its production. I have an email from them from November 4th. I have an email from them from October 7th, October 5th, September 1st, October 1st. Like, I have a constant stream of information coming out of that. I'm hopeful that game comes out and that it is what it originally was slated to be. And just Little Orbit has done such a better job at communicating it that I'm so much happier with them and what they've done. But that was, for me, supposed to be the next tactical game, like huge tactical game that I looked forward to, and I don't even fucking know if it'll happen still to this point. Another one, Banner Saga 3, Banner Saga 1 and 2 are both great tactical games. If you haven't ever heard of them, they're indie titles, and hopefully Banner Saga 3 does just as well. And there's also Vikings, and people like Vikings. So, hopefully people like Vikings. I think it's cool. Anyway, that's going to be the last question I take for the video itself. Thank you. Also, I had a pledge during the recording of the video, and it's for a standard tier supporter named Sploda. So I'm adding you because you did it in the middle of the video, so you get an extra one here at the end. Now, that being said, I did forget an announcement at the beginning of the video that I have to make a separate announcement video about after I'm done recording this. This Tuesday, I will be participating in an event known as Gaming Tuesday. It's an event that Save the Children does on, well, not just on Twitch, but it's very, very highly promoted on Twitch. Where basically, it's a day where a bunch of streamers, we all work together and we try to raise money for the Save the Children Foundation. In fact, I'm going to find you an exact thing for me to read so you can get just the right idea. So let's see. Gaming Tuesday. I'm just going through my email real quick since I have a bunch of stuff on Gaming Tuesday right here. Let's see. Where is it? Where is it? Gaming Tuesday. I did Gaming Tuesday last year. I did it on the day Final Fantasy 15 launched, and I felt like I did a shit job at it. So, yeah. Gaming Tuesday is Giving Tuesday for gamers. Gaming Tuesday was created as a fun and exciting initiative for gamers, influencers, studios, and companies to participate in Giving Tuesday, the International Day of Giving Back. Giving Tuesday is celebrated on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving and is widely recognized and the widely recognized shopping events Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Giving Tuesday kicks off a charitable season as the International Day of Giving Back. This year's Giving Tuesday will take place on November 28th, which is when I will be doing that streaming. So, hopefully that is a perfectly adequate explanation of what Gaming Tuesday is, and that is what we will be doing on Tuesday. So be sure, if you've got wallets, if you've got spare money left over from Black Friday or Cyber Monday that you're willing to give to charity this coming Tuesday, because I really dropped the ball on Extra Life this year, and so doing a second charity event in the same month, tough, because most people are tapped out, especially right after Black Friday and Cyber Monday and getting ready for holiday shopping and all that stuff. But the least I can do, Save the Children Foundation is ingrained in the beginnings of this channel. If it wasn't for Save the Children and Union for Gamers and Gaming for Good, then I probably wouldn't even have a channel that was worth a damn right now. So if they're doing an event, I'm participating, bottom line. So hopefully you guys can show up on Tuesday, give that. I'll do a separate video on that since this is at the end of the Monday video, and I hadn't thought about it because I knew I was doing a separate video for it. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'm going to wrap up on the YouTube video. I'm going to hang out for a few minutes with the Twitch chat while I figure out who I'm going to host. So thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Sploda, for the pledge and being added to the list. And thank you again to all the patrons and sponsors we thanked at the beginning and everyone watching. I will see all you fine ladies and gentlemen next week, where I'll be late posting it because I'm going to be in Canada next week for KupoCon on Sunday in Toronto. Be there if you're going to be in the area right after the Distant Worlds concert the day before. So I won't be flying back till Monday. So next week's Monday video will be late. Sorry. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Until then, take care.